Hello there, Toastie Potato here. Welcome back to my series on how to build trees in Minecraft. Today, we're going to be looking at the Chinese pine. This is another awesome tree, and to be fair, most of the trees I'm doing I think are awesome, so I'm going to be saying that about all of them. But this thing is kind of mental. It's requested by Fuzzy Cub. He's asked me to do some examples for him, and I hope I've delivered. Now, this tree is pretty spectacular. It grows around 20 to 30 meters, but I'm going to be focusing on some more smaller, like 50-meter ones. Many of the famous Chinese pine trees, like the greeting pines, are between 10 and 15 meters, and I think you can get some really cool sculpted forms with it if we focus on that size. What's really cool about this tree is this twisted limbs. It's used to growing in some extremely harsh conditions. Like, feel free to build this straight out of a mountain, because in real life, this thing does literally grow out of granite mountains, and it just can. Its roots actually secrete acid, which enables it to work without there being soil. So this thing is used to hanging off the sides of cliffs, and its twisted limbs are quite symbolic in lots of Chinese culture. These trees are meant to represent immortality and everlasting because of how they're able to hang on, survive in these conditions. So you could do some really cool sculptural forms with them and have them in some pretty spectacular places. But in this episode, I'm going to be mostly focusing on how they can be used to make ornamental trees, but I'll also be showing you how they can be worked into the environment so you can build them around rocks and cliffs. Join me on a creative server and I'll show you how I went about it. So let's give it a go. We're going to start off with some acacia block. I'm just using blocks in this tree because it's so twisted, you're never going to want to see the end of the log. I'm just going to start drawing out the shape. This first tree is going to be one that's been sculpted and formed. It's going to take several hundred years, if not a bit longer, to make it form this, but this is more something you'll find in an ornamental garden. These trees grow fast when they're young, but they slow down a lot when they get older. So when they're semi-mature, they can still have some pretty wild shapes. Once I've got the general shape down, I'm going to start putting the canopy. What is very distinct about the Chinese pine is it has a flat canopy. Unlike many trees which have kind of like a rolling form over the top of this, the Chinese pines grow up from their branches, and so I think the canopy just stops the level which their needles can get to. Once we've got the shape that we're happy with, let's start making it to 3D. So we're going to start with using tuff. Yes, I know, I love tuff. But one of the things about the Chinese pine is its bark is really scaly and it kind of peels off. So tuff and acacia work quite well together. Going to be using stairs. Think about how we worked on the olive tree to get these kind of cool twisted forms going on. And we're just going to really start pulling and twisting the tree to make its form. Again, using bits of glass here and there to force the walls to interact in certain ways. And you'll see that playing up later on. Remember, it's super important. We drew this thing in 2D, but you want the tree to be twisting in 3D. So start using stairs to maneuver the main trunk of the tree into different dimensions. I'm just going to be doing this in a 3D form, kind of twisting and pulling it to try get that shape right. To make more extreme steps aside, you can see here what I've done is I've used a tough block with tough slabs on either side, and then use a trio of glass panes to make it look like it's more connected to the main trunk. It's going to start off with slow, gradual slopes at the beginning and going to tighter turns at the top. Now that we get the main trunk done, let's work on some branches. Similar to the Scots pine, this thing kind of hangs out, and these branches can extend very, very far. And this tree is known for being super tough. They make furniture and temples out of this tree because they know it's got strong longevity. But the reason why it does this is that the branches can reach out from cliff faces and get as much light as possible. I tend to find at the bottom of the trees that the branches look lighter. So in this case, we're going to be using some andesite. But as we go higher up into the canopy, we'll be using darker blocks like tuff so that you get the sense that it's being shaded by the leaves. Remember, the same as what we did with the trunk. You want to be using your branches to push out from the 2D form. It's really, really important that you try to extend yourself at the beginning so you stretch out either side. Otherwise, you end up with a very flat tree. Working our way up, we're going to be using fences and gates to be making some thinner branches as we get to the top. Use your gates to extend the branches out. They're nice and delicate. And then using bends to allow it to change direction or drop down one. My tip is to use one gate and then one fence, change direction or drop down. That gives you enough dynamics with the branches to make it look interesting and make it feel like branches of a tree. Now that that's sorted, we're going to start working the canopy. I got bogged down in detail too quickly here, and you can see that when I was working with birch leaves. You want to stop that. You want to keep it simple to start off with. Let's just go with spruce leaf blocks. My best tip is just to pick a branch and start making patches of leaves around it. Remember how I said that this tree has a flat canopy? That's going to be your ticket to keeping it simple, and it very quickly forms the canopy of the tree and it starts looking really, really good. You want to limit the depth of your leaves to be about 1 block deep. You can push it a bit, you can have maybe 2 blocks, but you want to keep that as little as possible. At the edge of these branches, you want to be seeing several plateaus, and you really want to get a distinct sense of where each of the branches are, rather than having the canopy form into one massive blocks. You can see I'm just going around, I'm adding some depth below. Most of the time I'm dropping the depth below just so you don't see too much of the branch, otherwise I'm just having a flat top over the surface, and I'm just picking one branch at a time and starting to hide the fence gates and stuff below, and just add the nice simple flat canopy at the top. And very quickly you'll start to see a tree appear. Now, most of the leaves I'm putting on the outside because, similar to what happened in real life, this tree is trying to spread its limbs out as far as possible to get as much light as possible. But you can put some leaves on the inside of the tree. That's mostly just to merge the branches into each other and hide that jankiness that you can get with some of the fence gates and posts. You're going to be seeing this tree from a silhouette perspective a lot of the time. And so when you're looking through, you don't want to see any obvious gaps within it, and you want everything to kind of smooth itself out. But you can see here, without any detail, and just with going around each branch and creating these flat plateaus of leaves around it, we've now got a very realistic looking tree, and it's really not too bad. Now that our canopy's there, we're going to be going around the edges of each of the plateaus and adding a smattering of birch leaves. This is really helpful for making the tree become 3D again, because you can start to see the edges of the plateaus, and it gives it a fuller sense of what's going on without having to add any density to the blocks. Since that, we're going to go around and add some azalea leaves just where you're getting the light kicking off at the edges. It's not necessary, and I think actually what'll make it more realistic, this is a failure of mine, is if you choose one location as if in one orientation, and you can see the light catches them in that direction only. But whatever, sometimes I'm lazy and it's like, I'll just add the azalea leaves just wherever I feel like the light might touch at the very end. And there we are. We've got ourselves a beautifully sculpted Chinese pine. Notice how we've got the iron bars hanging down below? That helps give a sense of the dead branches. It looks really good. So now we're going to do something which is more like you'll see out in the wild. I've quickly thrown together some boulders here, akin to something where it'll be growing in the natural world. You could go further and just put it off the side of the cliff, but this will do for now. We're going to start off sculpting it, same as before. Let's just get a silhouette of what it'll look like. I probably should have chosen something better than acacia to show you, kicking off with the rocks behind, but I didn't. My mistake. What you can do is you can use pale oak logs or tuff to form the majority of your tree, just so you get that contrast behind. I find that the tree bark generally is a bit lighter, but you got to think more about what you're showing it against. We're going to throw up our canopy here. Remember, nice flat leaves. We're having this tree leaning over to the right hand side, and I'm really going to push it towards the right hand side. Without getting into too much detail, using exactly the same tips as what we did before, here's the tree. We just started by drawing out the branches, making them become 3D, and throwing in some canopies. Now, I feel like we could do better here down the base. It's kind of a bit blocky. So let's just accentuate that bit by breaking some of these branches and have it feel like it's growing. It was growing closer to the left. It's like dissolving its way through this boulder. And it just gives itself a bit more life towards the side. It's quite a chunky tree at the bottom, but don't worry, it's still got a nice silhouette to it. This is a fairly small tree, about 10 to 12 meters, which is akin to the same size as the greeting tree, which is one of the most famous Chinese pines you can get. You can push them a lot higher, but you know what? I quite like this. You get some really interesting forms out of it. Now, you may remember I said that they grow very, very fast when they're young and then slow down when they're older. This is one I've just kind of thrown together. It's quite tall, to be fair, but but the branches are very, very thin. So it's not like one of those ancient trees which are several hundred years old, which have like meter thick branches. I looked at an example of a small tree in an ornamental garden. I thought, let's give that one a go. We're using andesite because it's a very young tree, but you can change this to be something darker just to get that contrast against whatever you're placing it there. And then we just added the canopy to it. So there we are. Just look at the pictures, trace it out in 2D first, and you get some really cool forms with it. Well, I hope you found that helpful. I love this tree. It's so freaking cool looking. The way it like extends out and has such twisted branches is just so freaking cool. Thank you, Fuzzy Cub, for suggesting it. I've really enjoyed making it, and I look forward to seeing it in your world. I have been struggling, you may have noticed, to try keep to the 2-week time frame, which I said at the beginning. But hey, let's just say I'm enjoying building the world as much as I'm enjoying building the trees. So it's taking a bit longer than I would like. I've had some other suggestions from people on YouTube. Please just keep on adding them to the comments. I really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to working them. I guess we'll see what happens, and yeah, until my next video, bye-bye.